What weird thing did you predict? The best coin toss of my life. During the summer, I was playing cards with my friends and I was dominating them. They got frustrated and said, "I bet you can't win everything. Especially a coin toss." I laughed and agreed to the game. He claimed it would land on heads. I claimed that the coin was going to be caught in mid-air. He laughed, then flicked the coin into the air. Now, I intentionally was going to snatch the coin from the air, but before I moved my hand, some kid near us jumped and yoinked that coin and took off running. I was dying of laughter that day. Not so much weird as it was just frustrating for me. Before the days of YouTube, I came across this video of early touchscreen technology. It was the first time I had ever seen someone zoom in using their fingers. My jaw literally dropped, and I knew in my heart that that would blow up around the world. I wanted to invest money into the tech, and even found a German company that produced them. The problem being, I was under 18 and broke, with no knowledge of investing. That German company went on to make products for Apple. Mind you, this was before the release of the iPod Touch. I still think about that from time to time. Watch promo videos. You might be looking at the future. I had a random lady call up one day, asking to remove vehicles off of a guy's policy. I said I couldn't do it without written permission directly from him since she was not listed on the policy. I then hung up, put in my notes about the conversation and jokingly told my boss, "She's probably a crazy ex trying to get back at this dude." Shortly after that, I got a fax with written permission to remove the vehicle, clearly in a woman's handwriting. The signature didn't match up to other signatures we had on file for him. I then decided to call him up and see if he could provide the written permission directly just to be on the safe side. Sure enough, I called him and he said, "That crazy bitch. Do not remove my vehicles from the policy." She was, indeed, a crazy ex that was trying to get him in trouble with the DMV. For our wedding, we hired a great band to play the reception. I was friends with one of the guys from way back and I knew they were good and reliable. However, they were only going to play after dinner, so my wife told me to put together a playlist for during dinner. I put together a good low-key playlist for before and during dinner and for between the band sets. I started to get a bad feeling that something was going to go wrong with the music. Call it paranoia. So I put together a playlist that could go for the whole reception if necessary. My wife didn't know why I was bothering going through such effort when it was already taken care of. Sure enough, day before the wedding, one of the band members' mothers dies unexpectedly and the band can't play. It could have been a disaster, but I had a kick-ass playlist locked and loaded for the reception. The wedding ended up being perfect and lots of people told me after that they loved my music selection. Korra-Sami in Season 2 of Avatar, The Legend of Korra, I noticed some groundwork for a romantic relationship between Korra and Asami. Which was weird because this is Nickelodeon. They've never really been strong on their LGBT representation. But the film language elements were clearly there. The way they spoke to each other. The way the camera lingered, and note, this is animated, so you can't accidentally do this. If the camera lingers, it's intentional. And I told my wife while we were watching, I think they're trying to set up a lesbian relationship between those two. And then, in the season finale, I was right. When I first started teaching at uni, I was trying to be the cool prof. I was teaching technology and trying to be edgy and pulled out my iPod and said, "One day you'll be able to get phone calls on these bad boys," and I made some other stupid predictions that weren't right at all. Like 4 years later, bam, iPhone. There is a class of something like 50 students somewhere who think I'm some kind of prophet. All the other students I lectured just know I'm an idiot. But I'm all for small victories. That my fiancé would tell me that having a wedding would be a bad idea because people are going to put their own input in of how it should be and that it won't be our wedding but their wedding for us. 2 months later and yesterday she looks me in the eye, crying because more people are RSVPing past the due date, and says, "You were right, we should have just gone to the courthouse." It's not really weird or a prediction that makes me happy, but it was nice to hear her say I was right. Also, we are still getting married and having a wedding, family just sucks. I always thought that the off-color jokes my mom made about how she wanted me to stay home till I was 40 and never get into a relationship unless I was explicitly allowed by outside forces were, in fact, not jokes but how she truly felt about me branching out and becoming an adult and my own person. Well, what do you know? I get a girlfriend at 21 and the day she finds out I kissed her, my relationship with my girlfriend immediately became 100x harder because my mother would limit our talking together when we could see each other, and in the end forced me to break up with her. Now don't get me wrong, my girlfriend was, in hindsight, a piece of shit herself, but I feel like this would have happened no matter who I had started dating. Last summer, during the Summer World Cup, I was walking back home after work. An extremely drunk man, who was wearing a Swedish jersey and had an accent best described as foreign, insisted, with all the seriousness in the world, that this was the year that Sweden was winning the World Cup. While they didn't win at all, they made it to the quarter-finals, when hardly anyone thought they'd make it out of group stage. To this day, any hilariously improbable prediction that comes true / sorta comes true is known as a drunken Swede amongst my friends. Financial crash of 2007. I was freaking out about negative equity before it became a mainstream term to my then partner when he wanted to buy a fixer-upper house with no deposit, borrowing £100,000 plus another 10% on top to do it up. I insisted it was wrong. You always save for a deposit and a bit extra for the inevitable house improvements, fees, etc. I was working in finance at the time and reading a lot of finance blogs. Those in the know were predicting doom, but no one was listening. Glad I didn't attach myself to that wagon with my ex anyway. I don't exactly come out in a good light here, but I was young and ignorant at the time. I'm not proud of it. But that's what made it seem so weird when it came true. When my cousin, who was born female, initially came out as a trans male, everyone in the family accepted it. I didn't at first. Everything about it seemed unusual to me. When she was a little girl, she was about as girly as it was possible to be, and I just couldn't reconcile in my head that really feminine little girl I knew for so long was now identifying as a boy. Her announcement came completely by surprise to me. So I immediately expressed the view to my parents that my cousin was mistaken, that she was trying to re-identify herself as male because she thought it was the answer to her many emotional issues, that she had a rose-tinted fantasy of what it was like to be a man, which reality would never live up to, and that eventually, she would go back to being female. In short, I was saying it was a phase. Yeah. Of course, being the very good, progressive people they were, they set me straight on a lot of issues. And before too long, I had accepted my cousin's gender change, and even supported her as she went through her hormone therapy. Turns out I was right the first time. She went back to being female after 6 years of living as a man, and is, as of right now, a young woman again. And her reasons were the exact reasons I thought all those years ago. It really was just a phase for her. I have this weird talent for predicting what's gonna happen in movies / TV shows / video games. I don't know if it's because I've seen the cliches so many times or if it's all just coincidence or if I'm some kind of popular media prophet. But there have been multiple times where I would be watching a movie in the theater with friends or my girlfriend and then lean over and whisper something, and have it come true later on. For example, in the Halloween 2018 I predicted that the doctor guy was insane himself a while before it happened. I said it mostly as a joke, but lo and behold it came true. Also, I recently bought Wheel of Fortune on my Switch for me and my GF to play together, and 9 out of 10 times I can predict when one of us will land on bankrupt. I don't know how I manage to guess so correctly all the time, but it happens way too often. I have two, equally weird. I knew that Concorde would have a fatal crash, about 3 years before it actually happened. There was a news article about it that I watched with my grandmother when I was about 6, and I nonchalantly said, "It's going to crash in a few years." She reassured me that it's one of the safest planes and that nothing bad was going to happen, and that would have been the end of it, except it did crash in 2000, and she phoned up to ask how I knew it was going to happen. I don't know, I just got the distinct feeling the first time I saw it that something bad would happen. A colleague and I were sharing nightmare client tales with a new colleague, and we talked about one man who had last been in about 2 years previous to this. We'll refer to him as Mr. Dickinson, because that's his name. We just finished laughing about it when the phone rang. My colleague went to answer it and I quite calmly announced, "I bet that's Mr. Dickinson." She picked up the phone, then a look of horror descended and we heard her say, "Hello Mr. Dickinson," as she stared at me. No idea how I knew it was him, I just felt it. In high school my neighbor and her friend were obsessed with this boy in our grade. I thought he was kind of a jerk and acted out for attention. Like getting artsy and emo, prime emo days, despite not being either really. He wrote some emo/cry for help stuff on Zanga. And they were saying how they hope he'd be okay. And make it to his next birthday, 19. I said something along the lines of, "I think he just wants attention, he's more likely to get murdered than he is to committing suicide." Said this as he ran with a bad crew. he was shot a year later by his friend and died. Semi-relevant. During the weekend my brother and I wake up in the morning and immediately go downstairs to play Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. We normally take turns messing around and then switch off once we die. Well, it's been about an hour and I was being overly sadistic in-game. I said something along the lines of, "Here kitty kitty," to an NPC I was chasing, and then a pair of kittens come around the corner from the dining room and start meowing at us. You see, this was strange because we didn't have pets at the time and they went completely unnoticed until I said that. We were pretty shocked because we failed to notice kittens less than 15 feet away from us, and by the fact that they remained silent through gunfire, screaming and shit exploding constantly. Was a pretty crazy morning for us. In high school, we had to write an essay with scenes from our future as part of some creative writing assignment. I think I wrote about 12 scenes, ranging in topic from me being in college, me on a date with my future husband, a day at work, hanging with my future kids, and being old in a nursing home. Pretty basic stuff, spanning from early 20s to early 80s. So far, 2 of the 12 scenes have happened, one in which I got into an argument with my mom about shopping for my college dorm, and one in which a friend I had in high school would drop out of my life for a few years and come back into it sometime in my 20s, after a random phone call. The other 10 scenes won't have happened yet in my life, but I'll be curious to see if I keep this streak up. If my sister announces a pregnancy during Christmas 2027, I'll be March 3rd. I guess this is sort of kind of a prediction, but more like dumb luck. When I was in elementary school, the cool kids were talking about Jurassic Park and I was like, I love that movie, to fit in and also because I love dinosaurs. But I hadn't actually seen the movie because my parents wouldn't let me at the time. The coolest/meanest kid was like, "Oh yeah, what's your favorite part then?" And then my brain panicked to come up with something, so for some bizarre reason I was like, "The part where the guy is in the bathroom." By the time the sentence was out of my mouth I was already like, what the fuck, why did I say that? I mean, I wasn't actually like that, I was still a kid. Anyways, the kids' friends were all like, with the T-Rex. That was so cool. Referring to that Jeff Goldblum scene. All I could think of was how, what, is that really in the movie? So, that's my dumb story. My best friend made a friend in our apartment complex. From day one I said that something is off about her. My friend kept telling me that she's cool. It came out soon after that she's got quite a hoarder tendency, but I still didn't trust her and kept my distance. She was very vain and even said she only associates with pretty people. Would only go to the nicest places, but she did have a great job and lots of money. My friend lost touch with her and saw her recently. She gained a bunch of weight. She said she just got out of jail where she was for a year because her and her boyfriend were using her home to sell meth out of. I knew she was bad news.